Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a very exciting session planned for you today. At the Circle, we are reinventing schools, after schools, teacher training institutions so that we could empower children in low income communities to have a life that is filled with opportunity and choices. To that end, we have a bunch of programs that run to ensure that we are marching towards this vision. But one of our programs is the Circle Incubation, which is a 2 year full time program for entrepreneurs who wish to create their own schools and after school programs with the vision that through these programs, the life and learning outcomes for children in their communities can transform exponentially. We have two very passionate, hardworking, and amazing entrepreneurs with us from the Circle Incubation. You'll hear their stories in just a bit. But we have Samridhi, who's from the 2023 cohort of the Circle Incubation. And we have Rigzen, who's from the 2024 cohort of the incubation. Samriddhi is building an arts-based literacy program that can actually enable language-based expression in fun and creative and artistic ways. Rigzin is building a really innovative program in her village in Nubra Valley in Ladakh, where the heritage and the culture of the space can be leveraged to create intergenerational learning and to create villages as these booming, really enriched hubs of learning for the children there. You'll hear lots more about what they are doing. We'll be having a conversation with them throughout this one hour or so that we have together. We'll hear how they took their ideas and these lofty visions that they have and incrementally tested what works and what doesn't work. We'll hear about the very first prototype that they created. Pooja, who's the head of program at the Circle Incubation, will be moderating a conversation with them. Towards the end, we'll have a general platform for audience Q&A, but feel free to keep putting in your questions and notes as Samriddhi and Rigzen are presenting, and we'll hope to address as many of them as possible. Before I hand it over to Pooja, we have just opened the registrations for the Circle Incubation. We're looking for our fourth cohort. We'll be sending the link in the chat, but feel free to check that out and reach out to me if you have any questions about that. And over to you, Pooja.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Amina. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here and actually more excited to listen to Samriddhi and Rigzen share their journeys with prototyping and piloting. This session and this topic is actually very close to my heart, and this journey we've had with our entrepreneurs. And every time entrepreneurs actually apply to the incubation, and year on year, we've actually sort of learned ourselves what do we want to see on ground happening with children, and what does a prototype or a pilot mean to us. And this is a question we get asked a lot, that what is the kind of pilot are we expected to do during the incubation, what is expected out of it, what is the significance or relevance of it. And we thought that there'll be no better way than actually getting Samriddhi and Rigzen to share their pilots and prototype and what they actually learned through it. Before I actually facilitate this space and get them to share their journey, just sharing a little bit about the incubation and how we see pilots and prototype at the incubation. At the incubation, we work with early stage entrepreneurs who are in 0 to 2 years, who come with really big visions and ideas around how reinvention should look like in their context through education. And we believe that when entrepreneurs are so raw and are in 0 to 2 phase, a lot of the vision needs to actually be tested on ground to see that, okay, what will work and what will not work for children. And the entire idea of a prototype is that how do you not try to sort of design for perfection, but how do you sort of design a very small piece of the puzzle and go test and see whether that's working. You basically see that, okay, am I failing or am I learning something that's working for children? And how do you sort of pivot really fast? We take our entrepreneurs through an 18-month journey through which we actually get them to do multiple prototype testing. where we're like, okay, create a small experience that you feel will visually trickle down your vision to a child's level, and go and see if it's actually leading to the kind of outcomes that you're seeing. A lot of people are like, what is the difference between a prototype and pilot? Um, it's very simple. It's like a lot of jargon that's out there. Prototype is nothing but the service that you're creating or the experience that you're creating for a child, with the hypothesis around that this service or this experience is going to lead to a certain change in the child's life. And the pilot is nothing but you taking that service, that experience to ground and trying that out with children. So pilot is more the implementation and prototype is more the service that you create. With that, I'm not going to speak more. What we're going to do is we're going to invite Samridhi and Rigzen to actually share with us that what was their journey with creating their prototype and testing it on ground, and what have their learnings been with it. So first, I'm going to invite Samridhi to actually share with us that what is the first prototype you created, Samridhi, and like when Step2Words started, Step2Words just completed a year back in November. So congratulations on that. And when Samridhi joined, she actually just left her previous job and joined the incubation. So her idea was very, very raw. And in 1 year's time, she has taken like just an idea to an organization that is now funded and that's actually growing in terms of the team and the experiences and the number of children that she's reached. And this has all happened because of the multiple testing loops that she's gone on. So yeah, over to you, Samridhi, to take this head.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you so much. So, if I were to look back, exactly 4 years ago was when I started the first pilot with a bunch of kids that I was teaching when I was a Teach for India fellow back in 2020. And I took 1 year to even understand what the problem was. In 2021, exactly years ago, is when I did the first pilot with 110 students. And when I met my children, they were in grade 8, and almost 74% of my students could not read, write, or speak in English at that point. And during my Teach for India fellowship, with all the coaching mentorship that I received, and we had the Be the Change project opportunity where we could identify a problem, design a prototype, and test a pilot during our fellowship journey itself. And I think that was an interesting opportunity to begin with, is where I realized that my children really dread speaking in English or just the language in itself, because firstly, they come from low income communities and they don't have that exposure to the language. And what I tried doing at that point was just an idea that can we use theater to just see if they're going to enjoy the process of learning English. I did not put a lot of detailing into that first pilot because I did not have that understanding, on contrary to how Circle has enabled that framework for us now. But back then, I took the existing curriculum that the school had, picked up a few skills from them, tested few ideas, integrated something, tried something for 6 months. And what was surprising to me was earlier, when my entire class failed, in 6 months, we saw 73% students had distinction in with respect to English mastery. And I think, Pooja, if that answers your question, it's been a while to have walked that journey to now where Step2Words is just officially 1 year old. So yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for that, Samridhi. Samridhi, do you want to like share with the folks, like take them through your presentation, that how did you actually go about building your prototype and like testing it on ground, and the few phases of your prototype testing?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, just a second. It says full screen because this is Zoom. Is there a way that I can select a tab? I can. Just give me 1 second. Found it. Oh, wait. Pooja, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just do a slideshow. Yes, so I'll also like to briefly talk about Step2Words. So this will help you understand the different prototypes that we tested. we're a literacy through arts initiative, and we work with low-income communities. And we're currently based out of Pune. We work with the bottom 20% of the children who really struggle with literacy skills. And we dream of an India which is free from literacy gap. And I know how lofty and big and macro this sounds. But to even reach there, we have to start small. And I think that has been my journey over years. And we're really driven by the belief that literacy, voice, and expression will empower our students to access greater opportunities and contribute to better future for themselves in India. And like I was just sharing with Pooja right now, this is back in 2021-22, where I was working with grade 8 children who had just moved from a municipal corporation school to another public private partnership school, where these children and we did a pilot using theater and English as an integration, where we picked up one novel and we just tested characters, like not much of elements in English as well, just children to be able to articulate and identify and read what different character arcs were, what different character traits were. And the next pilot took a lot of time, and this happened post I was incubated in Circle. And this is something I really want to speak more about. This was just with 8 students, but the journey of 8 students actually started with 15 students. And I think this was quite a challenging period for me as well, because at that point, I did not have a team. Earlier in school, I had managers, I had colleagues, but this was a pilot done as an individual entrepreneur who's trying to build Step Towards. And I wanted to try phonics, which is something you do. It's very prominent with elementary education, where you work with kindergarten, first graders, and study with phonics. These were kids across grade 5th to grade 8th. So them not being able to even identify letters like A, B, C, D, or the sound of the letters or 3-letter word, we wanted to test something. But I think around this period, I made a lot of mistakes, which I'm really proud of. One of the big learnings I had was I had too many variables that I was trying to test. And another thing I missed out in this pilot was documenting those variables, because what happened initially, we had 15 kids. It was during summer break and exam time in Pune, Maharashtra. And a lot of parents take their children to their villages. So these were few of the kids, and we partnered with another organization, Pana Communities, who also happens to be one of the Circle incubated organizations. We leveraged their space because that was another variable I did not want to add. I was cognizant of that. And what we did was we brought these kids after school hours. We arranged an auto rickshaw for them and they would come. Despite arranging a transport, still a lot of kids dropped out because of other variables that I had not accounted for. And this was a 4 months pilot. And by the end of the pilot, we had to put up a small theater performance. This was more of like a very small skit that kids did. And as you can see on the top right picture, only 8 kids made it to the end. But these kids are still, we're working with them. And I think what brought for us through this pilot was an understanding that, hey, this works with the kids that need it the most, because here 100% of these kids moved one reading level up. We took it to the principal of the school, who gave us a school, and then that principal became our champion, and the parents of these 8 children became our champion to give us another school. So now, this year, we're working with 80 students in across 2 schools in Pune, and both the schools are in Pune, and they're affordable private schools. And I think right now also our program has 3 phases, where we're using visual arts in our phase 1 for building phonetics in children, and in phase 2 we're building reading comprehension skills in children using theater. And phase 3, again, we realized that we planned 3 phases, but because these schools have exams, these schools have holidays, and they have other things planned, I've also learned over the period of time is how can you make predictability while planning, and how can you enable a process in which, when you make over ambitious goals, how can you also make it realistic and measurable and quantifiable for yourself, so that you can take this learning forward. So this year, when we complete our phase 2 in June, we will be able to take our phase 1 and phase 2 ready program to the same set of kids. They will move to grade 6th, and we will be able to take it fresh for the new grade 5th that we'll be working with. So yeah, this is what I had. Over to you, Pooja.
Thank you so much, Samridhi. What a journey from those 110 kids to the 8 to again 80 kids. Um, One thing that really stood out and just want to sort of voice it is the clarity of the target audience that Samriddhi was operating with. She was very clear that she wants to work with the academically bottom 20% of the class. And she's like, I want to work with those children that nobody else wants to work with. So she actually went to schools and she was like, okay, tell me the kids you are not able to work with, you're struggling to work with, and I want to work with just those children, and I'm going to work with them through this program to integrate them back into the classroom. And I feel like that was a very bold step, but that was a very clear step because Samriddhi was clear that these are the kids I want to work with, and I'll curate experiences for them. Samriddhi, my question to you is like, while the pilot was very clear that like you were testing few things, what was your hypothesis when you were actually working with these 15 kids that then like there was attrition and it came down to 8? Like, what were the experience that you were actually testing which actually led to that 1 grade level jump?
Yeah, we were very clear for the pilot that you're speaking. We wanted the kids to be able to identify CVC words, which is consonant, vowel, consonant, rat, cat, box, hut, mat, and to be able to read them in sentences. So when these words become phrases, kids are able to read. That is the jump we wanted to see. However, it took us more time than what was anticipated while I started designing for it. We also collaborated with another organization that had phonics curriculum in place. We picked up a few things, but we wanted element of visual arts in it, storytelling in it. So that those are some elements that were not created before. So we integrated. But what happened, because we had not considered some of the other variables, external variables like holidays, vacation, parental investment was also a huge roadblock for us, given that it's a completely new style of teaching English and a lot of questions that came from parents as well. That delayed the process multifold for us. And then it took us 4 months to turn it into a theater performance by the end, which was also 10 minutes long itself. So yeah.
Thanks for that. And Samriti, I also remember that you made quite a few tweaks while you were doing the pilot. So could you also share that what was the information that was coming in while you were doing your pilot, and what were the tweaks that you made while in the journey rather than waiting for the 4 months to complete?
Absolutely. I think when we started the program, we made an entire unit plan of what each week would look like and what objectives would be in place. We also had an intern by this time who sort of helped curate the lesson plans. But when we went on ground, we realized, because it was a mixed cohort and I had not planned what the dynamics of a mixed cohort would look like, we had a lot of culture issues, which was not accounted for before. And I think I had to make a lot of programmatic choices to first invest in building culture. And that has also informed our phase 1 as well, where we spent 2 weeks on just building relationship and rapport with our students, because otherwise then the process becomes cumbersome. So that was one of the shifts we did. Then we also changed the structure of the lesson itself. We realized 2 hours is too long for children of this mixed cohort to sit and do focus work. Rather, I saw over a period of time consistency of 30 to 35 minutes of focus work. So I realized then the opening and closing has to be a lot of movement, balance of reflection, and then planning only for that block where you can have a productive student work by the end. So I think a lot of shifts happen then week by week basis, and I had to be okay with it. Was also a shift that I made.
Hey, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions because there's so much to learn from your pilot and your journey. Like, while you were doing the pilot, what were the different ways that you were actually observing like, whether the pilot is working or not? Like, what were the different formats? Because I know, like, there was student voice, there were data that you were collecting. So how did you actually observe the working of your pilot?
Yeah. I think one aspect was bringing external people to sit and observe the spaces gives you a completely out of the box perspective on whether they are seeing student voice or not, or whether they are seeing uh, this even translating it to student work. Is there data? So if you've put those things as goals, one best way is to bring an external person. What I also did was I brought my coach into the in-person site, and then she also spent a day with us observing these elements. Other element is storing qualitative, because I was the only one at that point. So I used to store a lot of qualitative data about a child that, for this, like a kid like Elisha, this works. This wouldn't work. Okay, for Ganesh, he loves reading. So can we give him more suggestions of the book? So then I realized that there is a need for differentiation. And these are some things we're still iterating and working and trying to find solutions. But yeah, the best way is to document your learnings. I used to voice record at the beginning. Now I don't do voice recording, now I document it. But earlier I used to really voice record and document, and pictures, evidences that children are engaged, children are disengaged. These elements, I think, informs your choices.
Hey, amazing. Thank you, Samriddhi. And yeah, like I saw you collect data and observe data in so many ways. You were also constantly asking your children, and you were also speaking to the parents, and you were collecting data, and there was student output. And you called multiple people, like no matter how messy the space was, and you're like, okay, give me all the feedback that you can. And that was very interesting how you put all that together. You did your pilot on your own, and this is one thing, like at the incubation, we keep nudging that as founders, you can't sort of get another person and tell them that, okay, here, do your pilot. How important was it for you to do the pilot yourself? Or why is it even important to, as an entrepreneur, to do the initial few prototype testing on your own and being on the ground and getting your hands dirty?
Yeah, this is a beautiful question. I think holds a lot of value. Just a few weeks ago, I was again on ground teaching, and we did master classes for our fellows who are currently teaching on ground as well. And while doing that, I had made a beautiful lesson plan with, it was just one page, and I was really proud that, okay, I was able to put it in one page. And when I went, I realized, okay, these are things that are still not working. These are things that we'll have to change with respect to planning. So I think being on ground holds a lot of value, especially if you as a founder is also involved in designing the program, in designing the service or experience for children. So the first pilot played an instrumental role in building an understanding of that, hey, this works. We're going to pick just this part and replicate it in our phases. And even doing it once a month really gives you insight. See, it's easier to coach and tell people or just say that do this, try this. But when you're doing it yourself, you realize different challenges that an educator is facing while implementing. As simple as behavioral aspects of children, or as simple as there are children that require more attention and need differentiation, and then you realize that your lesson should have different rigors for different children for their needs. So I think it gives you a zoomed out perspective even on planning just by being on ground implementing it yourself. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Samriddhi, for sharing that. And yeah, I think like one of the things that we constantly nudge our entrepreneurs to do is be the model for for their teachers and even for their students and other people who are observing them, because the idea of reinvention lies in your head. So till people around you don't see it trickling that down, it's very hard for them to understand what the concept of reinvention that you hold. So yeah, thank you for that, Samriddhi. And with that, I will invite Rigzen next, to share her journey. So Rigzen is from Cohort 24, and Rigzen is just 6 months into the 5 to 6 months into the incubation. And this time, before folks joined the incubation, they went through a very rigorous 8-week journey called the Sandbox. And we actually thought that even before you decide to be an entrepreneur and you're like, I'm going to set up an organization, it is very important for you to have that conviction that, hey, my belief is actually showing evidence on ground. What I'm saying will change children's life actually has some proof point of success at a ground level. And in the 8-week sandbox, we nudged all of our entrepreneurs to actually take the prototypes on ground and test to see what's working and what's not. I went to Leh to actually observe Rigzen's prototype, which was one of the most beautifully executed prototypes. And yeah, with that, Rigzen would love for you to take the folks here through what you were thinking, what was that idea, and then how did you actually make that idea come alive in a one-day prototype, and what all you actually learned from that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pooja, and thank you everyone for having us. So I'll begin with a little bit of introduction and background. Can I have the slides on, please? All right. So, hi everybody. My name is Rigzen. I run an organization called the Village Lab Foundation. It's in Sumur village in Nubra Valley, Leh, Ladakh. Yeah. So we're working with children in villages in Ladakh. The idea is to really transform village education, especially in the indigenous communities. So Village Lab Foundation works with a vision to build a thriving Ladakh where indigenous knowledge and practices are revitalized, and children carry their heritage forward with pride, confidence, and purpose. Next, please. So how we are doing it is one of our program is called the Ladakhi Way After School, which I'm building with the circle. It's in this is our like the new program, and here what we are doing is we are trying to really reimagine how learning happens, who can teach, and where can it happen. We work with children age 10 to 19 in villages in Ladakh. How is where our facilitators are the villagers here. It's an intergenerational education model where all generations come together to learn from each other, and we're using the whole village as a learning lab. We believe that education can happen or learning can happen anywhere, anytime, with anyone. So that's how we're reimagining education for children here in Ladakh. So for that big vision to happen, um, just to set a context, I have been working on this idea since 2 years. 1 year while I was in Harvard, we kind of started putting down the things that we want to work around, which was to use the village as a learning lab. We weren't very sure like how would that happen. So it took me a year to really finally come to pilot one. When I joined Circle, I actually started kind of implementing the ideas. So the first pilot happened in July. We worked with 48 learners in Sumur village with one facilitator. The idea of the first pilot and the second pilot was to really think about, there were three big assumptions that I wanted to test. One was, on which the whole program revolves, right? First one was that elders are actually willing to teach. That was big assumption that I had. And second was that the learners are willing to learn from elders, because in a conventional education model, learners are used to being taught by a teacher or in a school. So we didn't know, this was our assumption, that the learners will be willing to learn from the elders. And the third big assumption was that learners really place value in education, indigenous education to begin with. So these are three main assumptions that we wanted to test. And for that, the first pilot happened. Our first pilot was with our first facilitator, Meme Inyet. He's one of the elders in my village. We did a session on water management system in Sumur village. We had 48 learners, which was like, we did an open call. Whoever wanted, want to come. We visited schools and spoke about, this is what we are trying to build. Whoever is willing can show up for the session. So this was more like an open call for everyone. So 48 learners turned up and we had a session with him. That was our first pilot. And within a month, we did the second pilot. Actually, I think within like 20 days. Our second pilot was for which Amina and Pooja was a part of. Our pilot was around Ladakhi cuisine. We did that with 19 learners in Sumur village with two different facilitators. Here, the learners learned from Abi Lobzang and Abi Dolma how to make Ladakhi traditional two dishes. And it was more like hands-on. So we spent half the day cooking and preparing a meal and then had a little bit of picnic with that. So this was the second pilot that we did. Both the pilot had the same objective, that we wanted to really see if the learners are willing to learn from the elders, or if the elders are willing to teach, and if the learners really do find value in the indigenous wisdom and knowledge. So these were two pilots that we did. Now we are in the third phase of our pilot, which is more intensive and long. Since it's the winter vacation in Ladakh, we have a very long winter breaks, almost 3 months. So we're utilizing this to run an intensive pilot. So we're running now 6 days a week from 11 to 4 p.m. We have 38 learners from 2 villages, and we plan to work with 9 facilitators. Till now, it's been 21 days since we have worked, since we have started the third phase of the pilot, and we have till now we have worked with 2 facilitators. Here we are really testing the key learning experiences that we have designed, the exposure, the experience, and the exhibition part. So these are the key learning experiences that we want to test out. So it's going on now. Yeah. Do we have? Yeah. Some of the learnings that I've, kind of, it's an overarching learning that I've had, across pilots, is start early. I think I'm a kind of person who like to really first think through everything and make everything, like kind of come together and everything. So that's why I think I waited for too long to start, and I learned it the hard way. But I believe that it's always good to start early. When I implemented my first pilot, that's when it kind of like, why didn't I start early? So I believe that learning can keep happening along the when you are really implementing. Don't wait for the perfect program to build. You can always start early and learn and keep experimenting. And second thing is very similar, but I believe that there's no perfect program. And I think in my head, I think I was building that perfect program, and it took me too long to execute. That is my learning, that it doesn't exist now, I think, when I look back. And the third most important thing would be that pilots, sometimes, of course, there are assumptions and hypotheses that you are testing out. But what I learned is that pilots often provide unexpected insights and valuable learning opportunities. For example, when I was conducting the first 2 pilots, I didn't account for the knowledge piece, or I didn't account for how the some literacy elements that was happening, stuff like that. So I feel like there were so many things that I learned which was not necessarily my hypothesis to begin with, but there are so many insights that I've learned. As a result, I was able to now decide that we want to work with children above fifth grade. That was something that wasn't like a priority or a hypothesis for the first two pilots. So I feel that pilots often give you much more insights than you would imagine. So I believe that just like piloting repeatedly really helps you refine your program. So these are some of the learnings I've had, and I'm still learning. This our third phase or this pilot, the current pilot, is very intense, so there's a learning every day. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Rigzin. And I like Amina to just stay on that slide for like 30 seconds more than the previous one. I feel like these are such powerful learnings and something that we keep reiterating with our entrepreneurs, that you start early because we have to take the thought to action sooner, because the sooner we take it, the faster we fail and the faster we learn. Um, I feel like with that concept of a perfect program, I feel like the adjective is like an ever evolving program, because we are working with children who are like, humans. It's never going to be a constant, because every set of new children that you work with, every few years, the context is going to evolve, and there's never going to be like, hey, this is my program, it's ready. And how do we see our programs as something that will continuously evolve over the years as we continue to work with children becomes so important. And lastly, like I was with Rigzin when she had that aha on like, wow, my children are learning so much knowledge while doing this pilot. And I never knew that they're actually picking up pieces around science and vocab and like just process orientation. We spoke about how the kids ended up learning about the assembly line while the grandmothers taught them about the indigenous cuisine because of the way they organically set kids into like this assembly line system. So just do your pilot, because there's so much unexpected, there's so much more that you learn when you actually hit ground. In the interest of time, Rigzin, I'm going to ask you one question, because there's so many questions coming in the chat and I'd love for the folks to ask you guys that. What are those few things that you actually scrapped out of your program? And why am I actually asking this question is because we keep saying, don't be married to your solution. And sometimes it's so hard that, hey, like, this is something that has to work, that will work, and I'm going to keep this in my program. When you did the different pilot, what is that one thing or few things that you realized this is not working for my children? I thought it would, it didn't, and I'm going to scrap it.
I think one thing, the age factor, that's something, I mean, I wouldn't say scrap, but I think we have like now we are very sure that who is this program for and who is this not for. Earlier it was very open and we said that, okay, this is mixed age. This is still a mixed age, but I think we realized that, children below fifth grade didn't really kind of get too much as expected as the children who were like above fifth grade, due to many reasons. So we kind of got that clarity of who is this for and who is this not for the program, I would say. So now we have a two different separate program. Like the young readers program is for the children below a fifth grade. So we have made this completely different program for them. And second thing we're thinking, and I think pedagogy wise, the first program, the first pilot was more like lecture based, and the second program was more like doing based, like experiential, right, where kids are creating something, they're like really with the facilitators. So I think we are paying very kind of conscious attention to the pedagogy as a result of how we have seen the pilots going with regard to students engagement. So I think if we have more lecture based, then experiential, the engagement goes down, right? So stuff like that. So I think I like there isn't a big, kind of omission that we have done, but I believe there are so many things that we are now more clear about, because of the pilot.
Amazing. Thank you, Rigzin. And like, it's very interesting because Samridhi started with a very clear target audience and she created experiences to work with that target audience, and you had very clear experiences in mind, like this concept of intergenerational learning, and through your pilots you actually got clear about your target audience. So there's actually no perfect way to hit with a pilot. It's about what you want to explore, what you want to learn through the pilot, and actually like going with very clear assumptions that you want to actually test and learn about. So thank you so much for that, Rigzen. um, there are a lot of questions that are coming in the chat. So I'm going to hand it over to Amina to sort of open it up for the Q&A.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rigzen and Samriddhi, for sharing. I think we had some great insights surfacing from what you've shared from your experiences. I think there are a few program related questions. Specifically, I'll just take up Vedehi's question first, Samriddhi, which is for you. How did you identify theater as a medium? Were all kids open to it? And if not, how did you solve for that?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. Thank you, Vedahi. Firstly, when I started Pilot One, it was a guess that can we use theater to see whether children are going to enjoy learning literacy through it. But when I did it across the next pilots, I saw evidences that it works. In fact, when I was incubated at Circle, I thought of using all different sort of art forms, sculptures, media art, like couple of things to name. And then I realized that because pilots and prototypes are such strong learnings, like Rigzen was also saying, like you have so many insights that you get from it. Why not tap into it? Like, why do you want to do, like, we'll test it again in future. So I think I'm not saying theater is the only medium, but I've explored through pilots that it works for children. And I agree that not every child is open to it because it's a journey, it's a very intrinsic journey that comes out as an expression, and it takes a lot of time. And I think what we've been trying to do is building really strong relationships with children. I think we cannot do it without it. And that's why we've made an intentional choice of spending more time with children and just getting to understand. I think once they open up and once they speak in their own language, they become confident, and then you see that it's just easier for them. And then trying and testing it out in their own spaces with smaller texts, with smaller versions, and you see children slowly get used to it. So I think it's a matter of also giving them space and take it slowly with them, and not running behind outcomes is also a pace that we have to sort of balance over time.
Thank you so much, Samriddhi. Vedehi, I hope that helps. If you do have a follow-up question, you can even unmute yourself and just ask. Okay. Okay, no worries. I also just wanted to just put in another nudge that, first of all, you've been a great audience just listening so intently. I want to just request you, if any one of you in the audience are people who are toying with the idea of your own learning space, maybe it's a school, it's an after school program, intervention of any kinds, and are just navigating some questions, doubts, even when it comes to testing your first prototype, you can even surface those. And we'll hopefully try to answer that. Well, not me, but Rigzen, Samriddhi, or Pooja can definitely help answer that. Feel free to unmute yourselves, and I think we'll just take this time. Saloni, go ahead.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Amina, for moderating it so well. Um, I am trying to build a space in the soft skills and communication skills part. I have worked with education space since 2015, starting as a volunteer. Prior to 2 years, I was working with Central Square Foundation, working in Gujarat, and now I'm with the skill development department. In all the experiences I've found, it's all about that confidence that child has to be given, the soft skills part and the personality development part. So I'm trying to create a good model which can help me serve better to the children, and that's my intent. So honestly, right now I have modules with me through activities and a few theories that I can discuss, share and play with them upon. but now if I have to create it in the form of an enterprise or an idea to prototyping or an action stage, I feel I'm quite stuck at that moment that I'm thinking so much, but I'm not able to put that into action. So maybe guidance from any one of you or any suggestion, what should be the next step? How do I just go about it? That would help. Yeah.
Thanks, Saloni. Thank you so much for your honesty. We'll just open it up. Anyone who wants to take it up.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I can start. If you really believe that children need soft skills, I think just starting with a bunch of children that you have access to, where you can get unhindered time with them and you will be able to, and every day if you can do that, I think it's best to start. And you wouldn't require having lesson plans or your entire modules ready beforehand. You can even take it at a day speed as well. And then just test it and see that if this is a service that you think can go to different age groups, different children, or would you even need educators to be to take it forward from there, or is it something that you want to do it by hiring teachers? So like these are some of the questions that will only come once you start doing it. My suggestion or nudge would be to really start it with, even if 5 kids you have, that's a small sample size, I agree, but I think it's better to start with 5 if you've never done with kids, and then slowly championing their parents to get more children, and then gradually building your sample size. So yeah, I hope that answers. Rigzin, if you would like to add.
Yeah, I think you answered really well. I think one thing is that you are at a good space because like what do you want to work. um because that idea that you are very specific that you want to work in this space. So that's where you start, and you started, I believe. So now the idea is to really then who do you want to work for, or like do you have any target audience in mind? And the next step begins with where do you want to go, right, with that model. So sometimes people start with the target audience and then they kind of start building the model. I believe in your case, you have like a model or an idea, and now maybe like thinking through your target audience and then piloting is something that you can begin with. And I'm sure, Pooja would have more insights to, kind of add. Yeah.
Okay, thanks to both of you. That really helped. So for me, the first target audience that I want to cater is the ITI students, um, who have come to ITIs after passing either 10th grade or 12th grade. So that's the audience. And yeah, I do have access to them, as Samriddhi mentioned, and even Dixon, you're also telling. So yeah, maybe if yeah, got it. I totally agree with your point. I guess only taking action will help me get more questions on what I need to solve. So okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Saloni, and all the best for whatever you hope to do next. Awesome. So we had Abid, you had raised your hand. I don't see you in the screen anymore, but if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. We'll wait for. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Actually, I am running a after-school program, and this year we had ventured you know, uh, into uncharted territory, that is madrasas. Most of those kids, like, they come from ST, SC, OBC, and when it comes to basic numeracy, literacy, leave aside holistic development and all, they're losing on the basic things. So, how to navigate when the audience or who are in the admin, they are very stiff with whatever they want. Somebody talked about theater. Like, I can't even think about until like, I get them all on the board, and so how to navigate those challenges when like you have your program, they are okay with the basic numeracy, literacy, but there are many things which we have to experiment, right? And they are very rigid to those experiments, so they won't let you do that. So how to navigate that to like get the best out of your program? At least should I target only numeracy, literacy, should I target, like because like somewhere when I started teach were like working with the in the development education development center, so somewhere I have understood holistic development is what like I want to work into, and which actually makes the individuals which I envision with my kids. So somewhere it becomes a little bit of a tricky situation. Like I'm going into murky waters, and I really want it, like because there are thousands and thousands of these madrasas. I have piloted like in a small madrasa this pilot of mine, and learned a little bit of it. But still, like as I said, these questions are still there. Like the admin or the like who are at the helm of the affairs, who call the shots, like to get them on the board on the same things, it becomes quite tough at times. And sometimes you have to complete, like you have planned something, you have planned your program or delivery of your how to implement it, and then you have to completely reiterate it into a different way, getting their inputs. So how to navigate this, I wanted to understand from both of you, or anybody who can help me out in understanding this.
Thank you,
Over to
Abid. I
you.
think that's very valid, and that's something that different versions of community buy-in prop up in each entrepreneur's journey. What I would suggest is only because I've seen this on the ground, and I'm sure both Rigzin and Samriddhi have tackled this in their own ways. Rigzin's model is entirely something that would be fueled by the community members, and I've seen how her community members have come together to get the project ongoing. So Rigzin, if you can talk about how you created that buy-in, and Samriddhi, if you can also follow that up with other challenges that you faced, specifically in the earlier stages. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I really want to acknowledge that your whatever you have shared is valid, and in some ways or the other, all the entrepreneurs face that, like the community buy-in and some reluctance towards, even like part of the program that is laid out well, right? There's always an apprehensions or like reluctance. Um, so we still face some of it, right? So it's always there. So I really wanted to acknowledge that, first of all. Second thing, I want to emphasize that when you talk about pilot, and we did share about our programs pilot, you can also pilot engagement. You can also pilot who is willing to fund your program, or you can also, pilot who's willing to give out a space for us on a Saturday, 2 hours, or stuff like that. So the pilot is not always around programs. I mean, we did share about the programs, but I believe that if you feel the biggest hurdle for you is the buy-in or the engagement, that's where you can pilot. You can have some hypothesis that if I do this program which are aligned to the community's need, they will be will kind of we will have some engagement, stuff like that. So if you begin with some hypothesis where the community engagement is concerned, right? So you don't have to start your pilot always with the program. Whatever you feel is urgent and is something that you cannot move your program without, is something you can start your pilot with, right? Now when it comes to VLF, I had the privilege that on the villagers, because I started the pilot in my village, that helped. And second thing, I have a constant conversation and interactions with my villagers even before I moved out, right? So I moved out to different places, but even then, when I was out, I always had this constant conversation happening, where I was constantly kind of like sharing my ideas and thoughts. It wasn't very well thought through, but still they knew that I was going to come back and do something around education. So that's where it began, right? But when I came back last December 2023, since then I have been constantly talking to the villagers on a personal level, in group settings. I've had more than 50 meetings with the villagers, one village. So I believe that the constant interaction is really, really, really key to have that community buy-in. You cannot just appear one day with a very good program, and then expect that the community will buy in. Your program could be amazing, but if you do not have that personal connection, that's when I think things kind of get a little harder, I would say. So for me, I think the constant connection and conversations really helped.
Yeah, beautifully said, Rigzen. And what I want to add on is that when you're working with different stakeholders, you have to understand what you have to communicate. You don't have to tell entirely your program to everybody. You have to tell different versions of it. So, for instance, in my case, I work with bottom 20% children. So when I say bottom 20% children, for a lack of better word, they're called as lower order children. And when you are working with, say, school principals, what they understand is that, hey, we're going to get your kids to the grade level. That works for them. And then once you get in a buy-in, you say that, hey, our medium to get it faster and efficiently is via theater or is via arts. Then there is an easy, smooth way of bringing it in the program. When you're working with government partnerships, they work at a much more macro level. So, for example, we are saying that we want to work with kids from grade 5th to grade 8th so that after grade 8, a child doesn't have to drop out because of not having these basic foundational skills. So, what we would do is, hey, we are going to work on your dropouts, that no kid is going to drop out because of not knowing English. And here is our way to do it. So, I think what you're communicating is not wrong, but what you're communicating is what is like understandable on their end. I think that's equally important. And I also wanted to say something that Saloni was also saying, and similarly for you, is once you start falling in love with the problem that your community is specifically going, it'll be very easy for you to pinpoint those and put it in front of stakeholders and community while you are sharing your program. So you might not say everything about your program, but really important pieces that gets you the buy-in. So I hope that answers you a bit.
Thank you, Rigzen, Samridhi. Apit, I hope that answers your question. If you'd want to just put in any follow-up thoughts on the chat, that'll be great. Just want to account for other questions that have come in. We had a question. No, we have Dr. Lata raising her hand. I know there's a question for an implementation of curriculum and your long-term plans. I would love to hear your long-term plans towards the end, but we can take Dr. Lata's question right now. Dr. Lata?
Hi. Thank you for a wonderful session, for the insightfulness that we got through the session. Now, I am a school leader where I have a school strength of 3,000 kids. Now, you came bang on over there when you said, our kids are there in 8th standard, but they don't have reading skills, they don't have comprehension skills, they don't have speaking skills, nothing. So, as a long-term program, I completely understand what you said, and I've already implemented phonics into my curriculum. Like, I realized this problem, say, about 5 years ago, and I felt, let me work at the base, and that's where we introduced phonics. We introduced decodable readers, and I have got results till my 5th grade. But where I'm struggling is my kids who have gone ahead without this base. So they are in the 8th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, and they are not able to. So now when you don't understand the language, it's very difficult to comprehend anything that the teacher is teaching or to be in touch with the class. You are always distracted because you don't understand anything. And when you're distracted, then you distract the class. So even the 10% who are on par with the class are not able to do, or the teachers aren't able to do justice. So my question is, how do I tackle these kids? Because as a leader, I may say, okay, we want this. But as a teacher, for them, everything is curriculum based. For them is completing their portion. Whether the child understands, whether the child has got it is none of their issue. For them, madam, I have completed the portion. I have taught, but that's not what the matter is. The matter is what my children have understood and how are you improving their skills from negative to 0 or to 10. So how do I tackle this problem where my kids are doing nothing but rote learning? There is no application, there is no understanding. And if they don't have the language, English, maths, social studies, everything is rote learn. You tweak the question a little, make the why into how they won't be able to answer. So can I have something that I can try in my school for the 7th, 8th graders? And I have a class strength of minimum 75 per, because it's a government school, government aided school. I have a minimum strength of 75 kids per class. So that class strength becomes another issue for us. So I hope my question is clear.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Lata. And I feel like this is a challenge across India because the way our kids are assessed is really based on their skills of memorization. And I think both Rigzen and I can share a couple of things that might work for you. Firstly, the kids that you were mentioning, the bottom 10%, these are the kids that usually hinder a class is because they're really craving for attention and love. And because academically they're not getting that recognition and they're just looking in some ways that they can. And I think that this is something you have to really deep dive, and it's an opportunity for you to really learn more about where these children are coming from. And another way to do about is definitely if there is a way for you to break out that 75 in different groups based on their, I would not say based on their rigor, but based on just their skill level. It may not be the level of writing, it could be just somebody is able to read, somebody is able to speak. Like it could also be a mixed cohort. And thirdly, you would have to work with your teachers at a mindset level, because I feel like eventually, if they're asked numbers and outcomes from their classrooms, they will tend to move in that direction and work towards it. But if they're acknowledged or celebrated for, like you said, right, 0, negative, or 10, if they are bringing those progress numbers to you, they might put more effort. So I think it's a little systemic, and I understand it's a deeper issue across India. It's nothing personally to you or us. But these are some small things you can shift in your school where you can reimagine. And I think mainly if you can bring in a lot of elements of holistic way, which is arts. The kids may not know the basics and it's okay, but I feel like with different holistic versions where children have to think and talk, they pick up faster. And if they have to speak and present and express, they pick up faster. Automatically, the language is acquired, automatically, the subject expertise is acquired. So maybe seeing that, hey, if your board exams require these skills, just pick up the skills and maybe do something in-house. And there's so many organizations that have done it, partner with organizations. There's just so many ways that we all can collaborate to work towards children.
So that was my question. I put it like, if you would like to collaborate with our school, because instead of I telling my teachers do this, when they see somebody coming and doing it and getting results. So the issue with us is like we talk about percentage, 10% of the kids are like that and 90 are good. For in our classroom, it's vice versa. 10% are up to the grade level. 90% of the class is below the grade level. That's because of the government thing about no failures. They know they keep going to 8th grade, whether they know ABCD or no, they are there in 8th grade.
Absolutely.
So that's the whole crux, that 90% is below grade level and 10%. As you said, identified, we have done that, and we have these enhancement classes where we go down to the level of the child and start from there. But the kids are not interested. So we are working on where it should come intrinsic. The children should be responsible for their learning, and they shouldn't be coming to school because the parents are sending them or because the teachers want them to learn. So somewhere we are working. But yes, if you could give me any suggestions of organizations who would like to tie up with us and try it as a pilot project in our school, show results to our teachers, and then they get motivated, instead of listening, they are seeing things happening, and probably I can bring about a change in them too. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks for so much, and thanks for giving me this time to ask my queries.
Thank you, Dr. Lata. Great nudge for you, Rigzen and Samridhi, to maybe just put down your emails if any of the attendees would love to just get in touch with you. I think that'll be great. I think we just have time for one more question. Meera, I had read your question and would love to know that this full-time curriculum full-time program that you are implementing, if I got your question correct, you are looking for any heads up or any challenges that you can expect to navigate when you're thinking of implementing a full-time program like this. So that's what I understood from your question. If you would want to just elaborate, that would be great. And then we will close with that question. Meera. Okay. I'm not sure if you are here again with us, Meera. Anything that's coming up, Rigzen and Samriddhi, for Meera's question, which is, I think, around when you are actually now going to implement a full-time program that happens right after you're piloting and prototyping, and when you're thinking of solidifying it as a full-time program, what are some things that you should be cognizant of? If any responses are surfacing for the two of you, we'd love to just get some insights.
Yeah, I can definitely highlight some of the mistakes I've made myself is, for example, if for us it's literacy aspect, then there are components in literacy, and then there are components in art. Trying to do all of it at the same time and testing all of it at the same time will not yield results. So I think it's very important if Meera wants to try it with, say, SCL, component of SCL also has different parts. So if she can pick one part of it and one part of how is she integrating it with education, or if just in general life experiences, just test one small part of the program and break it down and build assessments around it rather than everything ready on a piece of paper and then trying and seeing it may or may not work. So I think these are some things that can be avoided, is to take it slowly and just parts. Rigzen, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think one thing that I wish I did, better, I think in the previous pilots was documentation. I think effectively, I believe that I couldn't figure out like the best way to document my learnings because the learnings were so much and there was so many things happening. I think I was just overwhelmed by the execution already, like I was just doing a lot of things and I was so excited and there was like so many new things happening that I got to immerse in the execution of the pilot that I wish I did better job at documentation, I would say. So in this space, the current phase, we are focusing on documentation, also qualitative and quantitative, which is something that I believe could be very useful for folks who are working in different spheres where documentation or like those numbers help them get more clarity. So I would say documentation piece is something I would nudge everybody to kind of focus if required, during their pilots as well.
I love that. I think that's a great tip for life as well, and any other professional area that you might be in. I always regret not documenting enough. So I think that's a great takeaway for whatever is it that you're doing. Awesome. We're coming to a close. And what I would love to hear from you both, I think that question was from Abin in the chat. What is it that's which are your long-term goals for both Village Lab Foundation and Step2Words? Long-term goals, and also what's coming up next? What are you excited about? And if you'd like to share anything, invite any of the audiences to anything that's coming up for your pilots or your programs, please feel free to just share that.
Yeah, I can start. We're right in the middle of this big pilot that's happening. It's almost like a full-time school because the winter vacation, right? So it's super exciting, a lot of learning, and I'm excited about a lot more collaboration in the future. Like in this, we have a very short window. Being in Ladakh, the weather and everything doesn't permit, a lot of, kind of collaboration, active collaboration on site, but we do have a lot of collaboration happening in the summer. So we're really excited about that. I think with that, our goal is to really reach at least 50 villages in the next 5 years, and then 100 villages, and eventually we want to really make indigenous education and curriculum accessible and available for all children in all indigenous communities in the Himalayan region. So that's our kind of long-term goal.
I love that so much. Okay, Samriddhi.
Thank you, Rigzen. Yes, so for Step2Words, we're currently working with 2 schools in Pune, reaching 80 students. And over the next 4 years, we want to empower other educators across India, anywhere, to take this approach. And we want to do it in at least one district in Maharashtra over the next 4 years. And beyond that, we would love to be in different parts of India, enabling and empowering educators to take this approach, art-based approach. And it's not just limited to English. The approach is something that the educators can contextualize it to different subjects like science, math, and take it forward. I think Step2Words as an organization believes in collaboration a lot, because we cannot be everywhere, but the approach has so much more value, and that should be everywhere for every child in need. So yeah, that's what our long-term goal is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. With that, we're coming to a close, but Rigzen, Samriddhi, so grateful to you for taking the time to do this, and also grateful to you for the work that you do on the ground. Rigzen, your vision with the 50 villages in Ladakh, I can only imagine how transformative that would be, but you're at it day by day, and so are you. Samriddhi, and this willingness to work with other organizations is just such a beautiful, humbling thing to hear about. We're going to close. You know how to reach out to Rigzen and Samriddhi. If you are interested in exploring the circle incubation as a program for a school or after school that you want to start, feel free to just register for the incubation applications. This is just the registration bit. Our applications are opening up very soon in February. But if you just quickly register, take 5 minutes to do this, you'd be able to talk to a circle team member and learn more about the program. And just the last bit, a poll is just coming up for you on your screens. We would really appreciate it if you can take 30 seconds to fill it out and then leave. But we hope to see you on another forum. Thank you so much again, Rigzen and Samriddhi. Really appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you for having us.
So much for having us here.